No, I think I'm the best fighter in the world because nobody nobody do what I do in boxing. Nobody take that risk like me, and I don't need to take risk. But I love challenge, and that's it. And I feel I'm still the best.
Welcome back to another episode of Fighting Words. I'm your host, Carissa Maxwell, joined by senior combat writer Andreas Hale. Andreas, you'll notice Tom Gray is not with us this week. He has the week off, but that will not stop us from talking about the most important thing happening this week. Of course, it is Cinco de Mayo. So no, that does not mean that I will be drinking a lot of margaritas. It does mean that actually, but it also means that our boy Canelo Alvarez will be back in the ring for the first time since his underwhelming fight against Triple G back in September, coming off of his left wrist surgery. Now, Andreas, you might not have Tom to argue with on this episode, but I don't think you're safe from the comments section because I know you have a lot of hot takes when it comes to Canelo. One being that he is fighting back in Mexico. He will be in Guadalajara, and this is his first time going back to Mexico to fight since 2011, which seems insane, especially since we have seen so much pomp and circumstance around his Cinco de Mayo fights out in Las Vegas. So before we get into the meat of the debate around Canelo, I just got to ask, how significant is it for him to be returning to his home country and fighting in his hometown of Jalisco in front of all of his fans in Mexico?
I mean, it depends on who you ask. If you're asking me, it's just another fight. But if you're asking Mexico, it's massive. The boy is coming home. So it's two ways to look at it. I mean, obviously the fight for a lot of people is underwhelming. It's John Ryder, somebody he's supposed to be. But, Canelo deserves a tune-up fight here and there, especially coming off of surgery. But, obviously I'd like the fight to be in Vegas because I live in Vegas. Easier for me to get to. But I love to see the atmosphere in Mexico for his homecoming. Over a decade since the last time he's fought there is a very long time. So I'm excited to see what the atmosphere looks like. So big for Mexico, for the rest of us.
And while the fight might not be that exciting against John Ryder, Canelo was still a topic of conversation, especially the past couple of weeks coming out of the Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia fight in the whole Gervonta Davis now being the face of boxing. Now, of course, we talked to even Oscar de la Hoya when we were out in Vegas, and he even said, well, no, Canelo is still the face of boxing, but Tank is next. How long do you think Canelo can still be called the face of boxing? Because I hate that I am even saying this, but as a 90s child myself, he's been in the game for a long time. He's been fighting for what feels like forever, but he is only 32. And now he's going into a fight. Sure, he's doing a title defense, but it's really not that exciting. So what do you think he needs to do to kind of revitalize this back half of his career, if even possible?
I mean, it's definitely possible. Canelo still is the face of boxing. I think, you look at his Instagram followers, you look at his social media following, you look at his endorsements. He's still the face of boxing. Gervonta's knocking at the door, but Canelo's not letting him in yet. The thing that Canelo has to do is, one, win this fight, which is kind of a foregone conclusion to most. But then it's his next steps. Do you fight Dimitri Bivol in September, or do you fight David Benavidez? Me personally, if you fight David Benavidez, somebody who's coming for the Mexican holidays, he wants to be the new face of Mexican boxing. If you fight him, a younger opponent, and you win, you're on the right track. A lot of us aren't necessarily sure he can beat Dimitri Bivol, even if it's at 168 pounds. And for the record, Canelo says he does not want that fight at 168 pounds because he thinks that even if he beats Bivol, we're not going to give him credit. And he might be right. So I think the moves here are fighting Benavidez at 68, defending the undisputed super middleweight titles. And then, maybe beating Dimitri Bivol at light heavyweight. But then the question is, does Dimitri Bivol fight a Turbeta-Biev? And is it for an undisputed fight? There's a lot of paths he could take, but those are the only two opponents. The dark horse in this situation is Jermall Charlo, the 160-pound champion, who people have said for a long time they would love to see Charlo versus Canelo. We haven't seen Charlo in the ring in a while, but I think that's the fight to make because, Canelo's kind of running out of options. He's pretty much beat everybody.
So Tom is not here to defend himself on this one, but he did just write an article for Sporting News saying that it's a bad idea to fight Dimitri Bivol. Do you agree with that? And if so, why?
Well, yeah. I think Dimitri Bivol showed that he's technically sound and superior in a lot of ways to a Canelo who is still a he's transcended Mexican fighting because he doesn't fight the necessary Mexican style by coming forward and just throwing punches. He's a counterpuncher by nature, but he's very economical. And against somebody like Bivol, who is a lot more busy, who's sharper with the jab and very defensively sound, Canelo couldn't even penetrate his defense. So a rematch, I can't see things changing much. It's a bad idea for Canelo on paper. But Canelo's a guy who likes to challenge himself, and he wants to be the best that the world has ever seen. And in doing so, he has to beat Dimitri Bivol. Bad idea for the rest of us, but it's Canelo. He's a competitor by nature. He has to take that fight at some point.
It's funny that, we even are talking about him fighting Dimitri Bivol again, because I was actually just going through the archives and I came across an interview that we had done with Eddie Hearn during the Triple G fight, where he said it wasn't out of the question for Canelo to even compete in the heavyweight division. And here he was, he lost at the light heavyweight. So in reality, is this something where, Canelo should just kind of stick to super middleweight, continue to dominate, use that as his way to get back possibly number one pound for pound list? Because I know right now you have him at number 5. Or should he continue to just try to take over all of these divisions, risking his title, and especially, again, this late into his career?
He's risking his health. Carissa, look, I know like people want to get all excited about, let's see Canelo at cruiserweight or light heavyweight. Can you see Canelo fighting Deontay Wilder or Tyson? That's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. You're going to get the man killed in the name of greatness. And Canelo, he's nuts. He'd probably try to do it if he could. But look, 168 pounds is where he needs to stay at. There's a ceiling for all fighters. At a certain point, you're just too small for the weight class. And that may have been the case with Dimitri Bivol, but I just think, you're small. You're 168 pounds. Like, even this is kind of a reach. And somebody like David Benavidez is huge. So stay at 68, clean out the division, keep fighting, keep winning. That's the only way you can stay on this list. Look, a lot of people consider Floyd Mayweather one of the greatest fighters of all time. But Floyd Mayweather wasn't fighting no 168-pound fighters just to say he was great. He was staying where he was at and where he was most comfortable. Canelo should kind of do the same. But heavyweight? Stop. We got to chill out. You're going to get the man killed.
So other than David Benavidez, what do you see as being the path forward to get him back in your number 1 spot for the pound for pound rankings?
I mean, look, first and foremost, Alexander Usyk has to lose to somebody like Tyson Fury for that to change. Now, Inoue is going to fight Stephen Fulton. He could potentially lose that fight, even though Inoue is probably a pretty significant favorite in that fight. And Spence and Crawford haven't fought yet. We don't know if they ever will. So there is a path for Canelo to get there. But I think there's 2 fights, and we kind of named them. You got to fight David Benavidez because that's the boogeyman at 168 pounds who's proved that he's worthy of that opportunity, and you have to beat him soundly. If you can do that and you fight Dimitri Bivol and beat him, there's a path. It's a hell of a path. It's like the Last of Us path where we got to travel across the country and fight zombies to get there. The numbers are against you, but that's the way to get back to number 1 pound for pound. But you need Alexander Usyk to lose because that man is right now got a pretty good stranglehold at number 1.
And then, like we have said countless times, not even in this episode, but in previous episodes of Fighting Words as well, he had a very underwhelming unanimous decision win against Triple G. Of course, he lost to Dimitri Bivol in the fight before that. Now he's fighting John Ryder. We've already said David Benavidez would be an ideal next opponent for Canelo. But outside of Benavidez and Bivol, who is there for Canelo to fight to continue maintaining that status as just giving fans what they want to see, the exciting Canelo fights that he has given us throughout the past, decade, to just make him the face of boxing? Is there anybody else even on that list to continue just those reputations around his fight?
I mean, let's be honest. I think the world is pretty Canelo'd out. We've seen a lot of Canelo over the past few years, and he's fought, again, pretty much everybody you could put in front of him, including Gennady Golovkin, who's now 40, and that was an underwhelming performance. So when it comes to names outside of Benavidez, it's kind of dicey. I mean, he could fight Artur Beterbiev at light heavyweight, but Beterbiev is not a household name. So Canelo's going to have a hard time finding opponents that drum up the interest, especially when you see like Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis fighting. That captured our imaginations. If Spence and Crawford figure it out, that captures our imaginations. we're kind of stuck here with Canelo. He's kind of done pretty much everything that he can do, which is why he's kind of on the back nine of his career, using a golf term because Canelo loves to golf. But there's really nobody left unless somebody comes out of nowhere to, maybe from 160 pounds. I mean, look, there's guys like Demetrius Andrade who've been chasing Canelo for years, but they don't really have the profile to enhance the Canelo fight and make it feel huge. It's Benavidez, it's Bivol, maybe Beterbiev, maybe Charlo. That's about it.
Let's talk about golf for a second, because you spoke with Damian Lillard a few weeks ago, and he unsolicited brought that up, that Canelo golfs too much, and that's preventing him from being as great as he could potentially be. Do you agree with that? And just dive into that for a second. Damian Lillard saying that Canelo Alvarez golfs too much, and that is impacting his boxing career. What a statement.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Look, I mean, somebody could say Damian Lillard watches too much boxing. That impacts his performance on the court. And that sounds ridiculous. I don't think Canelo golfs too much. I think Canelo's finding other hobbies and recreations to do to keep himself busy. Floyd Mayweather likes to buy cars and go shopping. It never affected him in the ring. I don't think there's much to that. The only thing I would say is that golf does have a wear and tear on your shoulders and your back and things of that nature. So it could wear his body down and make him more injury prone. But aside from that, let the man have a hobby. He just can't box all the time. He's got to find something else to do. He's endorsing Hennessy. He's golfing. He's showing off all his toys, and he's fighting in Mexico. Let the man live. If he wants to golf, let him golf.
I agree. Hobbies are great. All for golf. There's also the Wells Fargo Championship happening this weekend. So there's as much golfing as there is boxing, as there is Kentucky Derby, as there are plenty of spicy margaritas, as you know. So with that, let's get into your prediction. Who do you got for Canelo versus John Ryder on May 6th in Guadalajara, Mexico?
Carissa, are you really asking me this question? Look, I know stranger things. So. Stranger things have happened in boxing, right? Like, we've seen big upsets before. Not this weekend. Look, John Ryder's a fine opponent. Just to get a tune-up in, I think what we're looking for is to see how Canelo looks in those early rounds. Is he going to be more active? Is he going to be busier? Is he going to have a performance like the Gennady Golovkin performance, where it's underwhelming and we could sit here and say, it might be close that time for Canelo to think about hanging them up. If he has a lackluster performance against Ryder, even if he wins, we're going to say that. So, but I think he gets Ryder out of there. I don't think it lasts more than 7 rounds. I mean, he'll probably knock him out with a body shot at some point. It's target practice for Canelo. John Ryder's not necessarily elusive. His movement might give him a little trouble early, but I think Canelo's going to get him out of there. He's got to give the fans back at home what they want, which is a knockout. Anything less is uncivilized. So I'm picking Canelo by knockout in the 7th round.
Maybe 2023 will be the year of the body shot knockout. We're already on a roll, right? So we'll see. But we will be covering it here on Sporting News May 6th at Akron Stadium in Guadalajara, Mexico. You can stream it on DAZN, whether you are in the United States or in Mexico. So make sure that you subscribe to DAZN to watch Canelo's next fight. And after that, we'll see. Maybe it'll be Benavidez, maybe Bivol, maybe it'll be somebody else we're not excited about. But Canelo is back, and we are still talking about him. And I'm sorry, Andreas, it doesn't end here. But for Fighting Words, I'm Carissa Maxwell, joined by Andreas Hale, as always, and we will see you next week here on Fighting Words.